Every now and then, a song that I used to listen to ages ago will pop into my head. Sometimes it's more of an earworm, and I need to listen to the song, and that's that. But sometimes I'll listen to it, and the words will really speak into where I'm currently at in life. Maybe not the whole song, it might even be a specific line, but when I listen to it, I know that that message is for me. This happened to me recently, where I found myself singing these words from the verse of a song. You never know just what tomorrow holds. You're stronger than you know. Those words are taken from a song called You're Gonna Be Okay, a song written by Jenn. Now, I wouldn't say I've necessarily been feeling not okay. For the most part, I've actually been feeling quite good. But as I listened to the actual song, I realised that maybe I really did need to hear the message, that we won't know what tomorrow holds, that we have strength we don't always realise, and that ultimately we will be okay. We might need to know that when we're feeling at a low point in life. We might need to hear that when we've perhaps been having a bit of an exhausting time at work. Maybe there's testy people or circumstances we find ourselves in or around. We might need to hear those words when we're feeling a bit overwhelmed about certain things that lie ahead, known or unknown. The main thing is, at all times and in all circumstances, we need to hold on to Jesus and to remember that he is the steadfast rock that we can cling to at all times. You're gonna be okay encourages us to rely on the love of God, and that's what we're going to explore in today's musical musing. I'm Elizabeth. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of Selah, Time to Pause.
I will stop and breathe in your presence. Just breathe. Just breathe.
When Jenn began to write this song, it was in response to her husband Brian going through a nervous breakdown. As the story goes, what began as a tough time unravelled more and more to the point where his body and mind just said no. He was put on medication and even hospitalised. She says that even though what he was experiencing was so awful, that it was actually a time where God helped him to deal with certain things. Lamentations 3 verses 28 to 30 say this in the Message translation. When life is heavy and hard to take, go off by yourself. Enter the silence. Bow in prayer. Don't ask questions. Wait for hope to appear. Don't run from trouble. Take it full face. The worst is never the worst. And that was the verse that she clung to, reminding herself of those words and of God's faithfulness. Jenn says that she found herself singing You're Gonna Be Okay over and over again, singing it over herself, her husband and their children. She shared that, though it might not be a corporate Sunday song, she felt like it was a prophetic declaration. That even though we don't know what tomorrow holds, it can be filled with hope when we cling to Jesus. Now, Lamentations isn't a book of the Bible that I tend to spend much time in, but actually when I read that verse, there were so many things in it that struck me. The first line, when life is heavy and hard to take, go off by yourself. Enter the silence. I think I've spoken about this before, but when things in life feel a bit much, often the first place that I go anyway is to someone else. I don't take myself off by myself, and as the verse says, enter the silence. I find someone to talk to about what's going on, sometimes trying to validate how I'm feeling, or maybe clawing for wisdom that someone else might have. Then the next bit of that passage flows on from there. Bow in prayer. Don't ask questions. Wait for hope to appear. Oof, sitting in silence in prayer, not speaking or asking and waiting for hope can really feel painful. And I'll be honest, waiting in silence isn't my strong point. I used to be much better at it than I am now, but with how fast-paced the world is, and with the busy lives that we lead, waiting patiently is something that probably comes a lot less naturally. Certainly does to me anyway. But how important it is to steal ourselves away and wait on Jesus, the one who brings hope into our situations. And that bowing in prayer. Prayer is such a sacred space of communion with Jesus. I read a little book once called My Heart, Christ's Home. I remember it being on my parents' bookshelf and being fascinated with it, and I read it and it really spoke to me. It takes the analogy of someone's home room by room, and metaphorically speaks about how that represents the space in our hearts that we invite Jesus into. The bit I remember most vividly is where he talks about the squishy seats by the fire in the cosy lounge, where Jesus daily waits for us to come and be with him. He is there always, faithfully, and we neglect it usually when that time with him is when we need it the most. When we're feeling like we're not going to be okay, that is the place we must go to be reminded of the truth that we will. To be reminded that Jesus is there with us through it all, and that as sure as the dawn, hope will appear, because Jesus is hope. And then that last bit in the passage. Don't run from trouble. Take it full face. The worst is never the worst. Taking trouble face on does not sound like that much fun to me. It sounds pretty darn awful if I'm being honest, but when I read that, I was reminded of the story of David and Goliath. The Israelites were facing a fearsome enemy that nobody dared take on. The sheer size of Goliath and the armies of the Philistines that were behind him filled everyone with dread and fear. Terror overcame them, and there was nobody who felt up to the task or felt like they had a chance. And I wonder if that's because they were looking to themselves to be the solution and found themselves wanting, because let's be honest, there's no way any of them could defeat Goliath just by looking at things from the surface. But then along came David, who'd been sent by his father to bring bread and cheese to his brothers. I heard someone called Ray Hughes once refer to him as the pizza delivery boy. Anyway, David came, he heard the story of Goliath, and immediately decided that he would be the one to stand up to Goliath. David knew that God was with him. The things that the world tried to put on him to defeat the giant, the heavy armour, the big sword, well, they were too much for David. He couldn't use something of someone else's, something that didn't fit or suit him, to defeat Goliath. Instead, David used the gifts and skills that God had placed within him. He went out with his sling and 5 stones, the things he'd use in his normal everyday life as a lowly shepherd, to face the enemy. He met trouble faced on as just David, and he found that the worst was not the worst, and the giant was ultimately defeated. I think sometimes when we look at trouble or trials that we face, we try and think about facing them in our own strength, or try to deal with them in a way that we think someone else might. But actually it's good to remember that we've been equipped by God with everything that we need, and that we're never stood on the battlefield alone. He's there by our side always, and he'll be faithful to show up and to fill us with hope and courage we need to face any situation. The song reminds us that hope is never lost. And I love the bit of the song where Jenn sings, "Just take one step closer, put one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this, just follow the light in the darkness. You're gonna be okay." Putting one foot in front of the other is sometimes all we can do. It might not feel like much, but every step we take gets us closer to coming out of the other side of what circumstances we find ourselves in. It's a fact that life isn't a breeze. We'll all go through hardship and challenging times, but ultimately we know that it's true in the end. Ultimately, we will be okay. And I love the vulnerability of Jenn sharing about the situation that her family was in. I think sometimes as Christians we can think that everything in life is always rosy, that we need to put on a front, but actually by being honest about those times when things are difficult, being vulnerable, opening ourselves up, it almost gives permission to other people that actually it is okay for things to not be okay at the time. But ultimately we need to know the truth, that we have hope in Jesus, and that because of that things will be okay. Now I said at the beginning of this podcast that the line I've been singing over and over again is, "You never know just what tomorrow holds, and you're stronger than you know." At the moment I'm actually doing okay, but I'm about to go through a massive life change and have a baby, and it's all very unknown, which, if I think about it too much, does actually feel a little bit scary because, as they say, no amount of prep or reading or talking or anything really can truly prepare you for what is ahead. I know I'll just have to take each day as it comes. One day might be great and the next day might be terrible. Questions go through my head constantly at the moment, but as I listen to this song and sing the words, it's a comforting reminder that yes, I don't know what tomorrow holds. It might be good, it might actually be a shocker of a day, but when I walk with Jesus, his strength will uphold me, his hope will sustain me. And that is true for each one of us at all times, whether we're actually doing okay or not. As we listen to this song now, I pray for each of us that wherever we're at, that we take comfort in the truth that God is faithful, that He's the bringer of hope and the light in the darkness. Whatever we're walking through in life, big or small, happy or sad, I pray that we will know that hope is within reach at all times. And I'll end on another verse from Lamentations from the Message, taken from chapter 3, it's verses 22 to 24, and it says, God's loyal love couldn't run out. His merciful love couldn't have dried up. They're created new every morning. How great is your faithfulness. I'm sticking with God. I say it over and over. He's all I've got left.
I know it's all you've got to just be strong. And it's a fight just to keep it together. I know you think that you are too far gone, but hope is never lost. Hope is never lost. Hold on, don't let go. Hey, hold on, don't let go. Just stay one step closer. Put one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light in the darkness. You're gonna be okay. Your heart is heavy from those nights, but just remember that you are a fighter, a fighter. You never know just what tomorrow holds, and you're stronger than you know. You're stronger than you know. Hold on, don't let go. Hey, hold on, don't let go. Just stay one step closer. Put one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light in the darkness. One step closer, one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light in the darkness. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. When the night is closing in, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end, it's not the end. You're gonna be okay.
Hello, this has been Selah Time to Pause, a podcast from Plexus Salvation Army, an online church in the UK.
I'm Ian.
I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Sam.
If you've enjoyed journeying with us over these last few weeks, join us every Monday,
Or any day that works for you,
to spend time together, taking time out to pause, catch our breath, draw near to God, and refresh our spirits.
We share Bible teachings,
Reflections on songs we're listening to,
And on what's going on in the world around us.
as well as this. On the last day of the month, we look back and reflect, share any thoughts from our listener community, and ask what we can take from it into our daily living.
what we call our personal So What's for the month.
Join us, making us part of your regular routine, spending a few minutes to listen to what God might be saying to you.
Find us on your favourite podcast streaming service,
On Facebook,
or YouTube
by searching for Selah.
that's SELAH.
Time to pause.